The massive ship floated above Earth like a dark cloud. It was bigger than any city. Its shadow covered the land below for many miles. Inside this ship, thousands of humans stood in metal cages. They were scared. They were confused. They did not know what would happen to them. Queen Valara walked slowly through the prison area. She was tall and beautiful in a strange way. Her skin was pale blue like the winter sky. Her eyes were silver, and they glowed softly in the dark. She had ruled the Norian Empire for 3,000 years. In that time, she had conquered 17 different species across 3 galaxies. Humans were just the latest addition to her collection. Her advisors followed behind her. They were also Norians, but shorter and less impressive than their queen. They carried devices that scanned each human prisoner. The devices showed strength levels, intelligence ratings, and health conditions. "This one has good muscle mass," one advisor said, pointing at a large man who was crying in his cage. "That female shows high intelligence scores," another noted, gesturing toward a young woman who stared at the floor. Valara ignored them. She had seen strong creatures before. She had seen smart ones too. Strength and intelligence were common things in the universe. What she searched for was much more rare. She stopped walking. In one of the cages sat a man who was different from the others. He was not crying. He was not shaking with fear. He was not even looking at her. He sat cross-legged in the center of his small cell with his eyes closed. His breathing was slow and steady. He looked like he was sleeping, but he was not sleeping. His name was Park Do-yun. He was 32 years old. Before the invasion, he had worked as a mechanic in Seoul. He fixed cars and motorcycles. He lived in a small apartment alone. There was nothing special about his life on paper. Valara's advisors scanned him and looked confused. "Your Majesty, this human shows average physical ability. His strength rating is normal. His speed rating is normal. There is nothing remarkable about him." Valara did not respond. She continued to stare at the human. Do-hyun had not moved at all since she arrived. Every other human in the prison area had reacted to her presence. Some had screamed. Some had begged. Some had tried to hide in the corners of their cages. But this one sat perfectly still. "He will serve in my personal guard," Valara said. The advisors looked at each other with shock on their faces. "Your Majesty, the personal guard is reserved for the strongest warriors. This human would not survive the training. Surely one of the larger specimens would be more suitable. I said he will serve in my personal guard. But, do you question me?" The advisors went silent immediately. No one questioned Queen Valara. Those who did often disappeared. 2 guards approached Do-hyun's cage. They were Gorath, a species of massive warriors with gray armored skin. Each Gorath stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed as much as a small car. They were the perfect soldiers, strong, loyal, and without fear. The cage door opened. Do-hyun finally moved. He opened his eyes slowly and stood up in one smooth motion. He did not rush. He did not panic. He simply rose to his feet like he had been expecting this moment. The Gorath guards grabbed his arms roughly and pulled him forward. He did not resist. He walked between them calmly, his bare feet making soft sounds on the metal floor. They brought him before Queen Valara. She looked down at him. He was not tall by human standards. The top of his head barely reached her chin. Up close, she could see his features more clearly. He had a plain face with dark eyes. There were small scars on his hands, the kind that mechanics get from years of working with tools. But his eyes were what interested her most. They were calm. Too calm. There was no fear in them, but there was also no anger or defiance. They were simply empty, like a deep pond with no bottom. "Do you know why you were chosen, human?" Valara asked. Do-hyun looked directly at her. Most slaves could not hold her gaze for more than a second. The weight of her 3,000 years pressed down on anyone who met her eyes. It was an instinctive thing, like how small animals freeze when they see a predator. Do-hyun did not freeze. He did not look away. "No," he replied. His voice was flat and even. "But I suspect you will regret it." The advisors gasped. One of the Gorth guards raised its massive fist to strike him for his disrespect. "Stop," Valara commanded. The guard froze mid-swing. Valara continued to study the human. A small smile appeared on her blue lips. In 3,000 years, she had heard threats from kings, warriors, and gods. Most of them were dead now. Their empires were dust. Their species were slaves or extinct. But something about the way this human spoke made her curious. It was not the words themselves. It was the complete lack of emotion behind them. He spoke like someone stating a simple fact, like the sky is blue or water is wet. "You threaten me," she said. "Do you understand what I am? I have conquered worlds. I have ended civilizations. I have lived longer than your entire species has existed. What could you possibly do to make me regret anything?" Do-hyun did not answer immediately. He simply looked at her with those empty eyes. "Time will tell," he finally said. Valara laughed. It was a genuine laugh, something she had not experienced in centuries. This human was either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. "Take him to the training barracks," she ordered. "Give him food and rest. Tomorrow he begins his new life." The Gorth guards dragged him away. Other humans watched him go with confusion on their faces. Why had the queen chosen him? He was nobody special. He was just a mechanic. But one human recognized something in Do-hyun's walk. Her name was Yuna. She was 28 years old, and she had been a scientist before the invasion. She studied stars and space at a university in Bizen. Now she was a slave like everyone else. She watched Do-hyun disappear through a doorway, and she noticed something that others missed. His steps were perfect. Each foot landed in exactly the right spot. His body moved with complete efficiency, wasting no energy. She had seen that kind of movement before, in videos of martial arts masters. People who had trained their bodies for so long that every motion became automatic. This man was not just a mechanic. Yuna filed this information away in her mind. She did not know if it would matter. She did not know if any of them would survive long enough for it to matter. But she had a feeling that Park Do-hyun was more than he appeared. She was right. In the weeks and months ahead, the entire Norian Empire would learn just how right she was. They would learn that humans were not weak. They would learn that size and strength were not everything. They would learn that some creatures in the universe were dangerous, not because of what they showed, but because of what they hid. And Queen Valara, the 3,000-year-old ruler of 17 conquered species, would finally learn what it felt like to be afraid. But that was later. For now, Do-hyun simply walked to his new prison, his face as blank as always, his secrets buried deep inside. The game had begun. 3 months passed on the great ship called Eternal Dominion. The training grounds were located in the lower sections of the vessel. They were massive open spaces with high ceilings and hard metal floors. The walls were lined with weapons from 100 different worlds. Swords, spears, guns, and things that had no names in any human language hung in neat rows. Every morning, slaves from conquered worlds gathered here to fight. This was how the Norian Empire worked. They did not just take prisoners. They turned prisoners into soldiers. The strongest fighters earned better food, better rooms, and sometimes even respect. The weak ones died or were sent to work in the mines on distant planets. Do-hyun stood in the middle of the training floor. Around him were creatures that looked like monsters from nightmares. The Gorth were there, of course. These giant warriors had skin like stone and fists like hammers. One punch from a Gorath could break through a concrete wall. The Valki were there too. They were thin creatures with 4 arms and quick reflexes. Their skin changed colors to match their surroundings, making them almost invisible when they stood still. The Mindari floated above the ground on the far side of the room. They had no solid bodies. They were made of something like smoke or fog, but they could read minds. They knew what you were going to do before you did it. And then there was Do-hyun, a human, small, soft, weak. The training master was a scarred Norian named Torax. He had been a soldier for 500 years before becoming a teacher. He looked at the human with disgust. Today the new human will learn his place, Torax announced. Korath, teach him. A Gorath stepped forward. He was even bigger than the guards who had captured Do-hyun. His gray armor skin was covered with old battle scars. He had killed over 200 opponents in training matches. He was considered one of the best fighters on the entire ship. Do-hyun walked to the center of the fighting ring. He raised his fists in a basic fighting position. His face showed nothing. The bell rang. Korath charged forward like a truck. His massive feet shook the floor. His fist came down toward Do-hyun's head with enough force to crush a car. Do-hyun moved, but not fast enough. The fist caught him in the chest and sent him flying across the room. He hit the wall hard and fell to the ground. Blood came from his mouth. Something in his body had broken. He could feel it. Laughter filled the training area. The other slaves pointed and mocked. A human fighting a Gorath? What a joke. What a waste of time. Torax shook his head. Pathetic. Taken to the medical bay. But Do-hyun was already standing up. He wiped the blood from his lips and walked back to the fighting ring. His legs were shaking. His chest hurt with every breath. But he kept walking. Again, he said. Torax raised an eyebrow. You want to die faster? Again. The bell rang a second time. This time, Korath did not charge. He walked forward slowly, enjoying the moment. He reached out with one massive hand and grabbed Do-hyun by the throat. He lifted the human off the ground like a child lifting a toy. Little human, Korath said in his deep voice. You should have stayed on the ground. He threw Do-hyun across the room again. Do-hyun landed badly. His shoulder made a popping sound. Pain exploded through his body. But he did not scream. He simply lay there for a moment, breathing, thinking. Then he stood up again. Again. This pattern continued for an hour. Korath beat Do-hyun down again and again. Each time the human fell, he got back up. Each time he was thrown, he returned to the ring. His body became covered with bruises and blood. 2 of his ribs were broken. His left eye was swelling shut. But he kept coming back. Finally, Torax called an end to the session. Not because Do-hyun had won. He had not won a single exchange. But because even the other slaves had stopped laughing. There was something disturbing about watching someone take that much punishment and keep getting up. In the medical bay, Yuna found him. She had been assigned to work as a technical specialist on the ship. Her knowledge of science made her useful to the Norians. It also gave her some freedom to move around. Do-hyun lay on a metal bed while machines worked on his injuries. The Norian medical technology was advanced. It could heal broken bones in hours instead of weeks. Why do you do this? Yuna asked. She stood by the door, watching him with concern. Do what? Fight. You cannot win against them. You are human. They are not. Do-hyun turned his head to look at her. Even with his face swollen and bloody, his eyes were calm. Who said I am trying to win? Yuna frowned. What else is there? You fight. You lose. You get hurt. What is the point? Learning. Learning what? Do-hyun did not answer. He closed his eyes and let the machines do their work. The next day, he fought again. He lost again. The day after that, the same thing. A week passed, then 2 weeks, then a month. The story never changed. Do-hyun would enter the ring, get beaten badly, and return for more. The other slaves started calling him the fool. Even the Norians shook their heads at him. What kind of creature kept fighting when it knew it could not win? But no one noticed the small things. No one noticed that Do-hyun's losses were getting longer. His first fight against Korath had lasted 30 seconds. Now his fights lasted 2 or 3 minutes before he went down. No one noticed that he was starting to dodge attacks. Not always, and not completely. But sometimes he would move just enough that a killing blow became only a painful one. No one noticed that his eyes were always watching. Even when he was losing, even when he was on the ground bleeding, his eyes were open. They tracked every movement, every attack pattern, every weakness. Queen Valara noticed. She watched his training sessions from hidden cameras in her private room. At first, she was disappointed. Perhaps she had been wrong about this human. Perhaps he was just a strange fool who enjoyed pain. But then she started to see what others missed. "Computer," she said one day, "slow down the footage of today's training match. Focus on the human's eyes." The recording played in slow motion. The Valky fighter attacked with all 4 arms, a blur of motion that no normal eye could follow. Do-hyun lost the fight, of course. The Valky was too fast. But in the slow motion footage, Valara saw something interesting. Do-hyun's eyes were not panicked. They were not confused. They tracked every single arm movement. Not perfectly, not yet. But he was seeing things that should have been invisible to him. "He is learning," Valara whispered to herself. Her chief warrior, Commander Raxus, visited her the next day. "Your Majesty, about the human," he said. "He is useless. He has lost every fight. He brings shame to your personal guard. Allow me to dispose of him." "No." "But Your Majesty," I said. "No, Commander. There is something about this human. Something we are not seeing." Raxus wanted to argue, but he knew better. He bowed and left. Alone in her chamber, Valara continued to watch the footage. The human fell again on the screen, blood spraying from his mouth. But even as he fell, his eyes were open, watching, recording, learning. "What are you?" she whispered to the image. "What are you hiding?" In the medical bay, Do-hyun healed from another day of beatings. Yuna sat with him again, as she often did. "I watched your fight today," she said. "Did you enjoy it?" "No, it was hard to watch." "Then why watch?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. "Because I think you are doing something. I do not know what. But you are not just losing. You are planning." Do-hyun opened his eyes and looked at her. For the first time, she saw something behind his calm expression. A small spark of something. Approval, maybe. Or respect. "You are smart," he said. "Do not tell anyone what you think you see." "Why not?" "Because when the time is right, everyone will see. And it will be too late for them to stop it." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. Not from fear, from excitement, from hope. Maybe, just maybe, this strange man had a plan. Maybe humans were not as helpless as everyone thought. The great tournament came once every cycle. It was the most important event in the Norian Empire. Slaves from every conquered world gathered to fight for glory. Winners earned the honor of serving directly beside the queen herself. Losers earned death, or worse. The arena was located in the heart of the Eternal Dominion. It was a massive circular space surrounded by floating platforms where thousands of Norians sat to watch. The floor was made of black metal that had been stained with the blood of countless fires over the centuries. Queen Valara sat on her floating throne above everyone else. Her silver eyes watched the crowds below with ancient patience. Beside her, in a special viewing area reserved for useful slaves, sat Yuna. The queen had ordered her presence for reasons Yuna did not understand. "Your friend will die today," Valara said, without looking at her. Yuna kept her face calm. "He is not my friend. I barely know him." "You are lying. Humans form emotional connections quickly. It is one of your few admirable traits. Also one of your greatest weaknesses." Down below, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. First match of the tournament. The human slave Park Do-yoon versus the Garth champion Korath. The crowd laughed. This was not a real fight. This was an execution dressed up as entertainment. Everyone knew what a Garth could do to a human. It would be over in seconds. Do-yoon walked out onto the arena floor. He wore simple training clothes. No armor, no weapons. His hands were empty and hung loosely at his sides. His face showed nothing as always. Korath emerged from the opposite side. The Garth champion was enormous even by his species standards. He stood nearly 9 feet tall. His gray armor skin was thick enough to stop bullets. In his hand, he carried a massive hammer that weighed more than Do-yoon's entire body. The crowd cheered for Korath. They chanted his name. They had watched him kill dozens of opponents in this very arena. He was undefeated. He was unstoppable. Do-yoon stood alone in the center of the ring. He did not seem to hear the cheering. He did not seem to see the giant monster walking toward him. He simply stood there, breathing slowly, his eyes half closed. On the floating throne, Valara leaned forward. Something was different. She could feel it. The bell rang. Korath charged. The ground shook with each step. His hammer rose high above his head, ready to crush the tiny human in one swing. The crowd held its breath. Do-yoon opened his eyes, and everything changed. He did not run away from the charging Korath. He ran toward him, but he did not run straight. He moved at an angle, sliding to the left just as Korath committed to his swing. The hammer came down and hit nothing but metal floor. The impact created a crater 3 feet deep. Do-yoon was already moving. He did not try to punch Korath. He did not try to kick him. Such attacks would be useless against Korath's armor skin. Instead, he did something strange. He reached out with one hand and placed his palm gently against Korath's wrist as the Korath pulled his hammer back for another swing. It was not a strike. It was more like a push. But the angle was perfect. The timing was exact. Korath's own strength betrayed him. His arm continued moving in the direction Do-yoon had pushed it. His body twisted off balance. For just a moment, the undefeatable Garth champion was stumbling. And in that moment, Do-yoon struck. His finger shot out like a dart. It hit a spot under Korath's jaw, not the armored part. A soft spot where 3 nerve clusters came together. A spot that no Norian scanner had ever found because it was hidden beneath what they assumed was unbreakable bone. Korath's eyes went wide. Then they went blank. The Garth champion fell forward like a mountain collapsing. His massive body hit the arena floor with a sound like thunder. He did not move. He did not get up. Silence. Complete and total silence filled the arena. Thousands of Norians stared in disbelief. This was impossible. This could not happen. A human had not beaten a Garth. A human could not beat a Garth. It went against everything they knew about the universe. Do-yoon stood over his fallen opponent. He was not even breathing hard. There was no sweat on his face. He looked like someone who had just finished a light walk, not someone who had defeated an unbeatable warrior. He raised his eyes to the queen's throne. For the first time, Valara saw what hid behind his calm expression. It was not anger. It was not triumph. It was something much more dangerous. It was patience. The patience of someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The patience of someone who had planned every step, every loss, every beating, leading to this exact second. The crowd finally reacted. Not with cheers, with fear. They did not understand what they had seen, and things they did not understand scared them. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. They checked Karath's body. He was alive, but he would not wake up for many hours. Whatever Do-hyun had done to him, it had shut down his entire nervous system. The announcer's voice came back, shaking with uncertainty. The winner is the human Park Do-hyun. More silence. Then whispers. Then shouting. Arguments broke out in the crowd. Some said the fight had been fixed. Some said the Gorath had been poisoned. No one believed what they had actually seen. On her throne, Valara's face was carved from stone. But inside, something was happening that had not happened in 3,000 years. Her hands were trembling. This human had hidden his abilities for months. He had let himself be beaten day after day, learning, studying, mapping the weaknesses of every species on her ship. And then, when the moment was right, he had revealed what he truly was. Not a fool, a weapon. Yuna sat frozen in her seat. Tears ran down her face, though she did not know why. Pride, maybe. Relief. Hope. All these things mixed together in her chest until she could not breathe. You knew, Valara said softly, still watching the arena floor. Yuna did not try to lie. I suspected. How? The way he moved. Even when he was losing, his movements were too perfect, too controlled. No one moves like that unless they have trained their whole life. Valara turned to look at her. And you did not tell anyone? Would you have believed me? The queen considered this. No, I would not have. Down below, Do-hyun walked toward the arena exit. Other fighters moved out of his way. They had mocked him for months. They had called him the fool, the weakling, the dead man walking. Now they looked at him with new eyes. The Gorath prisoners stared at him with something close to terror. If he could defeat their champion, what chance did any of them have? The Valky fighters watched with calculation, already analyzing his technique, trying to understand what they had seen. The Mindari simply floated in place. Their mental abilities could not read his thoughts. His mind was like a closed door, impossible to enter. As Do-hyun passed through the exit, he glanced back one last time at the queen's throne. Their eyes met across the distance. Valara felt something she had not felt in millennia. Uncertainty. She had conquered thousands of worlds. She had defeated armies and gods. She had never met anyone or anything that made her question her own power. Until now. What else was this human hiding? What else had she not seen? And most importantly, was he a threat or an opportunity? She would have her answers. Tonight, she would summon him to her private chambers. Tonight, she would learn the truth about Park Do-hyun. But deep in her ancient heart, she already suspected that she would not like what she found. The game had changed. And for the first time in 3,000 years, Queen Valara was not sure if she was still winning. That night, the doors to Queen Valara's private chambers opened for a slave for the first time in 3,000 years. Her rooms were at the very top of the Eternal Dominion. The walls were made of a strange material that looked like frozen starlight. The ceiling was transparent, showing the endless darkness of space above. Strange plants from 100 worlds grew in careful arrangements around the edges of the room. Do-hyun walked in alone. No guards followed him. They both knew guards would be pointless now. Valara stood by the observation window. She did not turn around when he entered. She simply watched the distant galaxies spinning in the void. You have been on my ship for 3 months, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was tension beneath it. You fought in 47 training matches. You lost all of them. My advisors called you the most pathetic human they had ever seen. They were not wrong, Do-yoon said. But they were not right either. Now, she turned. Her silver eyes were bright with something between anger and fascination. In 3,000 years, she had seen many strange things. She had watched stars die and civilizations rise and fall. She thought she understood the universe. This human made her feel like she understood nothing. What are you? She asked directly. Human. Humans are weak. I have studied your species. Your bones break easily. Your skin tears easily. Your bodies have no natural weapons. You cannot survive in extreme temperatures. You need constant food and water. By every measure that matters, you are one of the weakest intelligent species in the galaxy. All of that is true. Then how did you defeat Koroth? Do-hyun moved toward the observation window. He stood beside her, looking out at the stars. For a moment, he said nothing. Do you know how old my family's training is? He finally asked. Training? What training? On Earth, there are families that have studied combat for generations. Not for years. Not for decades. For centuries. My bloodline goes back over 800 years to warriors who discovered something that your technology has never found. Valara frowned. Explain. Every species in your empire fights in the same way. They try to become stronger, faster, bigger. They add armor and weapons. They enhance their muscles and their reflexes. They overcome their limitations through force. That is the only way to win. No, it is the obvious way. My ancestors chose a different path. Do-hyun turned to look at her. They studied weakness instead of strength. Weakness? Every creature that exists has weak points. Pressure points. Nerve clusters. Joints that bend in certain directions. Blood vessels that are close to the surface. The larger and stronger a creature is, the more weak points it has. The more energy its body needs, the more ways that energy can be interrupted. Valara processed this information. You are saying that strength creates vulnerability? I am saying that nothing is unbreakable. The Gorath are covered in armor skin that can stop bullets. But beneath that armor, they have the same basic biology as any creature. Nerves that carry signals. Muscles that respond to those signals. A brain that controls everything. The spot where you hit Koroth. A place where 3 nerve clusters come together before entering the skull. Your scientists never found it because they were not looking for it. They scanned for strong points, not weak ones. They measured how much damage the Gorath could take, not where that damage would matter most. Valara's mind raced. The implications of what he was saying were enormous. If what he claimed was true, then everything the Narian Empire knew about warfare was incomplete. Why did you hide this? She asked. Why pretend to be weak for so long? Because I needed to learn. Learn what? Do-hyun smiled. It was a small smile, cold and patient. I knew nothing about the Gorath before I came to this ship. I knew nothing about the Velki or the Mindari or any of the other species you have conquered. I needed time to study them, to watch how they move, to learn their patterns and habits. Every time you lost. Every time I lost, I was mapping vulnerabilities. The Gorath attack with their right hands first. The Velki have a blind spot between their second and third arms. The Mindari cannot read thoughts when someone is in extreme physical pain. Every species has patterns. Every pattern has holes. Valara stared at him. You let them beat you almost to death. You let them break your bones and spill your blood. For 3 months. Pain is temporary. Information is permanent. A cold feeling spread through Valara's ancient body. She had conquered 17 species. She had stood on the bones of fallen civilizations. She had believed herself to be the most dangerous thing in the universe. But this human had walked into her ship as a prisoner and turned his prison into a classroom. "The Norians," she said slowly. "You have been studying my species too. Of course. What have you learned?" Do-hyun did not answer with words. Instead, he moved. His hand came up in a blur of motion and stopped less than an inch from her throat. She had not even seen him start to move. Her guards would have been useless. She understood that now. By the time they reacted, her heart would have already stopped. "Your species hides its nerve centers behind secondary bone layers," Do-hyun said calmly. "But the bone is thinnest here." His finger touched her throat gently. "And here." He touched a spot behind her ear. "And here." He touched the base of her skull. Valara did not move. She could not move. For the first time in 3,000 years, she understood what prey felt like. "You could have killed me at any time," she said. "Yes, why didn't you?" Do-hyun lowered his hand and stepped back. "Because you are going to need me." "Need you? For what?" "Something is coming. Something worse than me. Something worse than your entire empire." He turned back to the window. "I have heard your soldiers talking. I have listened to your communications. There is a species you have never defeated. A species that makes even the Norians afraid." Valara's blood went cold. "The Wraiths. They are coming, aren't they?" She wanted to deny it. She wanted to tell him he was wrong. But she could not lie to those empty, knowing eyes. "Our scouts detected their fleet 3 days ago. 10,000 ships. They are headed directly for us. And you have no way to stop them. The Wraiths are a hive mind. They share one consciousness across their entire species. Every time we kill one of them, the others learn from it. They adapt faster than we can attack. They cannot be defeated by force." "No," Do-hyun agreed. "They cannot. Then what do you suggest?" Do-hyun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different. Less flat, almost eager. "The Wraiths share consciousness. They share memories. They share skills and knowledge." He paused. "What else do you think they share?" Valara frowned. "I do not understand. Pain, fear, shock. If one Wraith feels something, they all feel it. Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness." Understanding dawned in Valara's ancient mind. "You want to attack their connection." "Not attack, exploit. The Wraiths have never experienced true terror. No one has ever gotten close enough to their queen mind to threaten her directly. Her consciousness sits at the center of the hive like a spider in a web. If that spider suddenly felt fear, the entire web would feel it," Valara finished. 10,000 ships crewed by creatures experiencing sudden, overwhelming panic. Their coordination would collapse. Their fleet would scatter. They would be vulnerable. Valara studied him with new eyes. This human was not just a warrior. He was a strategist, a planner, someone who saw connections that others missed. "And you believe you can do this? You can get close enough to the Wraith Queen mind to make her feel fear?" Do-hyun met her gaze. In his eyes, she finally saw something other than emptiness. She saw hunger. She saw purpose. "I have spent my entire life learning how to find weakness in the strong," he said. "Give me one chance. One chance to reach their queen, and I will show you what humanity can do." Valara made her decision instantly. "Done," she said. "What do you need?" "A small ship. Fast and quiet. And one person to come with me." "Who?" "The scientist. Yuna. She is smart, and she is brave." "I will need both." Valara nodded slowly. She was putting her faith in a human. a creature she had captured as a slave. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt like the smartest thing she had done in 3,000 years. "Prepare yourself," she said. "The race will arrive in 3 days. I will be ready." He walked toward the door. "Human," Valara called after him. He stopped but did not turn around. "If you fail, we all die. I know. And if you succeed." Now he turned. That small, cold smile was back on his face. "If I succeed, Your Majesty, you will owe humanity a debt. And I intend to collect." He left. Valara stood alone in her chambers, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Wraith fleet was coming to destroy everything she had built. And her only hope was a human mechanic from a small planet called Earth. The universe, she decided, had a very strange sense of humor. The Wraith fleet appeared on the edge of the system like a swarm of black insects. 10,000 ships. Each one was shaped like a long needle made of something that was not quite metal and not quite bone. They did not fly like normal vessels. They moved together, turning and shifting as one creature. Because in a way, they were one creature. One mind spread across 10,000 bodies. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Queen Valara watched the fleet approach. Her admirals stood around her, their faces gray with fear. They had seen what the Wraiths could do. Entire civilizations burned down to ash. Billions of lives ended in hours. Nothing had ever stopped them. "They will reach weapons range in 4 hours. An admiral reported. Valara said nothing. Her eyes moved to a small screen in the corner of the bridge. It showed a tiny ship flying away from the main fleet, heading directly toward the Wraith swarm. Inside that ship were 2 humans. Daihan sat in the pilot's seat, his hands moving over controls that Yuna had quickly taught him to use. The ship was small and fast, designed for scouts and messengers. It had almost no weapons. It relied on speed and silence to survive. "The Wraith fleet has detected us," Yuna reported from her station. "They are sending interceptors." Daihan did not react. He simply flew the ship deeper into the swarm. Yuna watched him with a mixture of fear and admiration. In the 2 days since Queen Valara had agreed to this plan, she had learned more about Daihan than she had in the previous 3 months. She learned about his family. 800 years of martial artists, each generation passing down knowledge to the next. She learned about his training. He had started when he was 3 years old. He had not stopped for a single day since. "You have been preparing for this your whole life," she had said. "Not this exactly," he had replied, "but something like it. My teachers always said the real skill is invisible until the moment it matters. Then it becomes impossible to ignore." Now that moment had arrived. Wraith ships closed in around them. They were strange vessels, organic-looking, with surfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse. Inside each ship were Wraith soldiers, creatures made of shadow and hunger. They had no individual minds. They were all connected to the Queen Mind at the center of the fleet. "They are not firing on us," Yuna noticed. "They are curious," Daihan said. "They have never seen a ship fly directly into their fleet before. They want to know what we are doing. What happens when they figure out we are attacking? Then we will already be inside their command ship." The Wraith interceptors surrounded them but did not shoot. They guided the small human vessel toward the center of the fleet, toward the largest ship. It was massive, bigger than the Eternal Dominion, shaped like a great black heart pulsing with dark energy. "The Queen Mind is in there," Yuna whispered. "That is where the consciousness of the entire species lives." "I know." Their ship was pulled inside through an opening in the hull. They landed in a vast empty space filled with strange mist. The air was breathable but smelled wrong, like old blood and dead flowers. Daihan stood up. "Stay here. Keep the ship ready to fly. What about you? I will be back soon. And if you are not? He looked at her with those calm, empty eyes. Then fly away as fast as you can and tell Queen Valara that I tried. Before she could respond, he was gone. Do-Hyun moved through the wraith ship like a ghost. The corridors were dark and twisted, more like tunnels inside a living creature than hallways in a machine. Strange things floated in the air. He ignored them. Wraith soldiers appeared around every corner. They saw him. They reached for him with their shadow hands. He was already gone. His body moved in ways that should not have been possible. He did not fight the wraiths. Fighting would waste time and energy. Instead, he flowed around them, through the gaps in their perception, past the edges of their awareness. The wraith hive mind was powerful, but it had weaknesses. When every creature shares one consciousness, blind spots become universal. If the mind does not expect something to happen, none of the bodies watch for it. No one had ever attacked the wraiths like this. No one had ever thought to attack them like this. They expected armies and weapons and ships. They did not expect a single human walking through their fortress like a shadow through shadows. The Queen Mind's chamber was at the heart of the ship. It was a vast space, hundreds of feet across, filled with pulsing darkness. In the center floated the Queen herself. She was not a creature in any normal sense. She was more like a living storm, a cloud of consciousness given form. Eyes opened and closed across her surface, like stars being born and dying. She saw Do-Hyun immediately. "Who are you?" Her voice spoke directly into his mind. Every wraith in the fleet heard her question. Every wraith saw through her eyes. "I am human," Do-Hyun said out loud. "And I am here to teach you something your species has never learned." "What could a human teach you?" "Yes." Do-Hyun smiled. That cold, patient smile. Fear. He moved. The Queen Mind was ancient. She had absorbed 1,000 civilizations. She had millions of years of combined memory. She knew every fighting style in the galaxy. She did not know this. Do-Hyun's techniques did not come from strength or speed. They came from understanding. Perfect understanding of how bodies worked. How nerves carried signals. How consciousness connected to physical form. His hands found pressure points that should not have existed. His fingers touched places where the Queen Mind's vast consciousness connected to her physical presence. And he pressed. The Queen Mind had never felt pain before. Not real pain. The pain of her soldiers was always distant, shared across millions of bodies, diluted into nothing. This pain was not diluted. This pain was focused, concentrated, direct. For the first time in her existence, the Queen Mind screamed. And because she was connected to every wraith in the fleet, every wraith screamed with her. 10,000 ships went dark simultaneously. Pilots lost control. Soldiers collapsed. The perfect coordination that made the wraiths unbeatable shattered like glass. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Queen Valara watched her screams in disbelief. "The wraith fleet has stopped moving," an admiral reported. "Their ships are colliding with each other. They are in total chaos." "Attack," Valara commanded. "All ships, full assault. Scatter their fleet before they recover." The Norian armada surged forward. For the first time in history, the wraiths were not fighting back. They were running, fleeing in every direction, their shared mind overwhelmed by terror and pain. Inside the wraith command ship, Do-Hyun withdrew his hands. The Queen Mind floated before him, shaking, confused. Her countless eyes looked at him with something new in them. Fear. "Tell your species to leave this part of the galaxy," Do-Hyun said calmly. "If you ever return, I will find you again. And next time, I will not stop." He turned and walked back to his ship. The wraiths did not try to stop him. When the small scout vessel emerged from the wraith command ship, Una was crying and laughing at the same time. "You did it," she gasped. "You actually did it. I told you I would. What happens now?" Do-hyun looked out at the chaos of the Wraith fleet. Ships scattered in every direction, running from something they could not understand. "Now," he said, "we go collect what is owed." Hours later, after the battle was over and the Wraiths had fled to distant parts of the universe, Do-hyun stood before Queen Galara again. The entire court of the Norian Empire surrounded them. Generals, admirals, advisors. They all looked at the human with new eyes. "You saved my empire," Galara said. "I saved my species," Do-hyun corrected. "Earth would have been next. Name your reward, freedom? Wealth? Power? I can give you worlds to rule." Do-hyun shook his head. "I want Earth removed from your list of conquest. Forever. I want every human on your ships released. And I want your promise that the Norian Empire will never threaten humanity again." Galara was silent for a long moment. These were not small requests. He was asking her to give up a planet she had already claimed. But when she looked into his eyes, she knew there was no other choice. "Granted," she said. "All of it." Do-hyun nodded. He turned to leave. "Human," Galara called after him. "One question. If your abilities are so powerful, why do your people not rule your own world? Why are you mechanics and scientists instead of kings?" Do-hyun stopped. He looked back over his shoulder with that small smile on his face. "Because real strength is not about ruling, your majesty. It is about knowing when not to." He walked away. Una joined him at the hangar, where the ships that would carry the freed humans back to Earth were waiting. She walked beside him in comfortable silence. "What will you do now?" she finally asked. "When we get home." Do-hyun thought about it. "Fix cars, probably. Maybe motorcycles. Same as before. After everything you have done? After changing the entire galaxy?" He shrugged. "I never wanted to change the galaxy. I just wanted to protect my home." Una laughed softly. "You are a strange man, Park Do-hyun. Maybe, but I am a human. And now the entire universe knows what that means." They boarded the ship together. Behind them, Queen Galara watched the humans leave. 3,000 years of conquering had taught her many things. But this one lesson she would remember forever. Some species were dangerous because of their strength. Some species were dangerous because they refused to be conquered. And humanity, she now understood, was the most dangerous of all. Because they had learned to turn weakness into power, patience into victory, and fear into freedom. The game was over. Humanity had won. The end.